Speak from the heart. Speak from the heart. Speak from the heart. How's it going? I obviously I want to speak from the heart tonight. I have lots going around when it comes to thoughts, but I really want to dig a little bit deeper into how I feel about a lot of the things that I normally think about. And in order to do that, I think I should start to, I would say, describe what it is that I've been thinking and maybe understand what it is that I feel about it, or maybe I could try the other way around and just talk about how I feel and hopefully make the connection between that and why I've been thinking the resulting thoughts. I really don't know how to express it, though. I mean, as much as I've had the ability to express the things that I've thought and felt in my life, the very things we want to truly express are usually the things that are difficult. Why else express something if it isn't difficult? I mean, we could go down the road of trying to, philosophize and, talk about semantics to try to figure out what it is that we want to express or not express. But at the end of the day, if something is easy to express, you tend to not really value that very much. I mean, there are lots of people who talk a lot but have nothing to say. And those are the kind of people that really express the things that are easy for them to express. But it's all bullshit. It's nothing you really want to hear about. On the other hand, having something to express that's difficult, it seems to be something that we really want to express, you know what I mean? Like people who do art or who write a book or maybe even build a building, the work that we put into things as a form of externalization of whatever it is that we want to express, that to me seems like what it is that we desire most. And of course, we can never pinpoint what that is, because if we could, it would just be another easy thing to express. Well, this isn't easy to express on its own, but to the degree where I have to even think about expression altogether. In any case, on the way over to where I am now, I'm in my car as usual. I was thinking about a few things like words or phrases or sentences, and for the life of me, it's kind of difficult to remember. It's just always difficult to remember different things for me recently. However, I want to remember because the things that I had thought of were organic, right? They're just sort of things that somewhat represent, at the very least, something that underlies my feelings. One of those things was speak from the heart. That's truly one of the pure anchors or points from which I can depart and really say, yeah, that's an honest to God description of what I feel. A very accurate kernel of truth. So I want to speak from the heart. That being said, maybe I should reduce the thoughts and really just focus on the feelings. Another thing that I had sort of felt like words pop up in my mind was darkness. There's a dark energy going around. Now, I know this is somewhat kind of melodramatic or no, I think that's the proper term for it. It might seem melodramatic or post-apocalyptic kind of prophetic speaking, but ultimately there's no other way to express that. I mean, there's a reason for why people speak in those tones and draw or create a piece of art or act, behave in these ways that are, I would say, not morose, but I really need a good synonym for dark. But dark is the sort of reflexive instinct that I have when it comes to expressing that. Ultimately, it's definitely, something along the lines of darkness. there's a darkness, a shadow overcasting, and it's in the air. It's this electricity, it's this buzz, it's an energy, it's a feeling. It's like this impending sense of, I wouldn't say doom, but if you choose to perceive it that way, then yeah, it could very well be doom. Whatever it is, doom or not, I would say that there's an energy in the air, and you can perceive it whichever way you want to perceive it, and it's heavy. So heavy would be a good way to explain how I feel. There's a heaviness in the air. There's, the obvious things that we could point to in everyday life, and then there's the major events that happen, that occur. But ultimately, I think there's a heaviness that always exists. So it's like a cake. And I really want to explore all the layers. You have what you call the candles, I guess, on top of the cake, and the flame that lit the candles. It's usually the current events, the main shiny, point of focus. Everybody's just, focusing on that. It's the flame, it's the light, it's what's happening right now in the moment. It's very, it flickers. It's, there's a word I'm looking for. It's not evasive, but it's elusive. It's just it's there one moment, it's not there the next. It flickers, And that I would use to represent the current events of right now, which is this pandemic, this virus pandemic, global pandemic, which in turn causes the domino effect for all the other layers, like the economy, which would be the frosting on the cake. And then, everything down from there, all the layers of cake. And at the center, if there's any sort of filling there, or at the bottom where there's a hard crust, I would say there's an existential heaviness, So between the crust and the flame on top, there's lots of different things. We could look at pressures from our family, career advancement, depression, dealing with some sort of physical ailment. I don't know. There's many, many things. But at rock bottom, being who I am, a very existentialist type person, there is that sort of angst that we all feel at all times. It's just, in our subconscious, but it's never really quite fully drowned out. That existential dread, some people call it. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be dread, but it's definitely a tension. Causes a tension in our lives. And I know this is all sounding quite abstract, but the moment that you start to specify feelings, I think, is the moment that you're starting to constrict what it is that you're trying to express. And that's what's so difficult. You have to start slow. You have to build up to it. If I'm going to speak about it instead of represent it through some sort of writing, a poem or a thesis or something, or maybe a script. I write movie scripts as well. Whatever form that I use to externalize certain things, it's always got to start with something abstract. And yeah, I think I've painted a bit of a picture of how reality is. Now, I don't particularly like the cake example, but ultimately it serves its purpose. In any case, there's heat as well. It's pressure, heat, tension, weight, which is going back to why I had said the word heavy. And it's really pressing down on us. Not just now, it's always there. And I think a lot of people don't really ever acknowledge that and just sit there and say, yeah, I'm an individual consciousness with a feeling of separation between me and nature, me and my fellow man, me and the rest of the universe, me and myself. There's a sort of weird feeling of darkness, heaviness, a weight. And in any case, this all starts to boil down to how this becomes incredibly pronounced when we find ourselves in times of mass existential crisis. And this is definitely one of those times, if I've ever come across one in human society. The idea that many people find themselves facing reality as it is, the harshness of it, especially after having enjoyed a sort of self-cocooning of and indulgence of, I would say just syrupy, sappy, indulgence in this idea that life is beautiful, that love exists everywhere and is the meaning of everything, and everybody is beautiful, and it's all about, cakes and unicorns and lovely pixie stardust just flowing down from the heavens. This is all nice, and I sympathize, but there's a disgust. I feel a certain type of contempt, a disgust, an aversion to that sort of mode of thinking. It's what has rendered us weak. It's what has made us so... I can't even use another word. I'm just dripping with disgust. In any case, the idea that human beings are naturally, inherently good. It's not that they aren't, but it's not that they are either. A book that really changed my life is one called Beyond Good and Evil. And it's so self-explanatory. I mean, the beauty is in the complexity of how brief that phrase is. It's short, but man, is it powerful. I mean, it packs a serious punch, man. It knocks you into next century. It really does. Now, Nietzsche really did say, I philosophize with a hammer. What it takes others' books to write, I can write in a paragraph. He wrote in aphorisms, largely due to the fact that he was practically blind and had, deep physical issues. In any case, by the end, he had people writing his stuff for him. He would just sort of dictate. And there's a sort of similarity that I share with Nietzsche in the sense that out of necessity, he had to compress things. Now, I'm not equating myself to his genius. He's incredibly far more sophisticated and advanced in his prose and his ideas and his thoughts and his character. I'm really just truly, without the self-modesty that's so fake and just transparent nowadays, I definitely do not want to fall into that light. But I truly am nothing. I'm just an amateur in comparison. And that brings me comfort to a degree. I think one of the reasons that I want to keep it that way is because I have something to hold on to, and it's him. It's what he has said. It's what he does. In any case, following his example, I don't know if it really is due to the circumstances that I've encountered in life that made me this way, or if I'm just realizing that I'm emulating him. But I condense things. That's what I do. I normally condense any thoughts or ideas or feelings that I have, and I strive to unpack them or let them bloom, I would say, deflower, naturally, to the degree that it should develop naturally, right? Instead of artificially trying to, what we would say in French, décortiquer, which means to, it's hard to translate, to dissect, but it's a very crude sort of translation. In any case, to dissect profusely and categorize, I don't really want to do that when I speak about an idea. I think it should naturally unfurl. If I have to force and really put in too much effort and time into describing and deriving different things from the main idea, the main point, that pressure that I had created in order to compress an idea, if I have to crack that nut, crack that little pill that I really just pressed together with force, I feel as if though it ruins it. So naturally, letting myself flow through the ideas, letting myself feel, use my intuition, it brings a lot more balance to the thoughts, the ideas that I've had. So being an emotional being, I think we might see it as irrational to a degree, but there's no reason for why we can't use the energy that is involved in the process of having passion, of being emotional, and leveraging it towards unfurling the ideas instead of the other way around, having this intense energy just being drained by the brain, forcing it into some kind of product that it can create, one that was idealized by a single image in the mind initially, and then to strive to just perfectly detail that image out and try to create it excuse me, in your own flawed image is, to me, the wrong way to go. I mean, I think that's an imperfect expression. Excuse me. And so a perfect one would be that, precisely the opposite. To let myself feel, to let the passion seep through, emanate off of me, and then have the thoughts and the ideas, the intricacies of language paint the picture, right? It's less arrogant. There's less ego involved. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. At the same time, I feel as if this is a wisdom that I've earned, and with hard and harsh consequence, as I just don't have the energy or the motivation anymore to write or even create content like this, to be honest. But that's because at the thought of thinking certain things, right, and really putting the pressure on the mind like I used to, just grinding it out until there's nothing left, of course, there's just this overwhelming, crushing weight on my soul when I think of having to do that, which is unfortunate because I used to drive myself with such vigor, and there was a passion behind it, but that passion surprisingly has run out. And what's left is conviction. And that's, I think, the mark of maturation for, I suppose, a man of character. So maybe I'm just finally starting to become mature. In any case, this kind of heaviness that I feel personally, it really is sort of opening my eyes as to how to see the world now. Before, I was looking at the world and always trying to understand it in order to understand myself. That was the end goal. When, the simplest path between A and B is a straight line. And that being said, I really should have just started with me, start to look within myself. And so there's a degree of fear that I've been hiding under for so long, making myself believe that I was facing reality, facing life, truly understanding it, truly being philosophical, being open-minded, taking responsibility. And none of that really was ultimately true because I hadn't really been understanding myself directly. That was like a cover story. It's ironic how paradoxically linked life is. I mean, by understanding myself, I've, in the last, say, year, I would say a solid year and a half now, by going out into the world and trying to understand myself, I've progressively understood that you understand the world around you at that point. There's a connection there. Now you can go ahead and try to funnel all the information about the world around you and what happens and the experiences and the people and the possibilities into your little mind to try to compute it, calculate it, categorize it, and then make sense of it at the end of the day. And that'll all just drive you nuts, rob you of your passion, rob you of your energy, and ability to do something about yourself, ultimately. So I don't do that anymore. Yeah, I just realized that it's much easier to just focus on listening to my body, my mind, my spirit, my heart, my soul, and starting to channel that energy into that. I realize I'm being more righteous, not in the eyes of others, but, by my own rights. I'm being righteous by my own being, my own self. And it's allowing me to do things I wasn't able to do before, like overcome certain problems, deeply rooted problems in my life, abstract ones, things that we can't just fix by saying, okay, yeah, I guess I have a problem in this area. I'm just going to go and talk to the person that's involved, or, do this action and it'll absolve me of it. It doesn't work that way. In any case, afterwards, I think you realize, wow, yeah, there's something about my life and my experiences that holds some connection, some string that leads me to the truth about the external world. You want to understand the world, you understand yourself. It's just, simple. And that kind of harkens me back to, now it's the first time I've used that word, harkens. It's an interesting word. I'm not sure if I'm applying it properly, but in any case, I'm going to use it with risk. It harkens me back to a story that a friend told me. His name's Oliver. And Oliver traveled when he was 17 years old to Vermont, or Maine, I believe, one of the northern states close to the border of Quebec, as he's from Montreal. And he spent some time in a cabin owned by a Native American. And the land there had several cabins, apparently. He was shacked up in the nicest one, apparently. And after having left his stuff there, he went to this party, I believe. I could be messing up the story, but the detail isn't important. What happened is, when he came back, the cabin was on fire. And he felt horrible for the guy who owned it. In any case, his passport was in there, and everything got burned, and it just sort of made his trip home much more difficult to make. So, being the guy that the Native American was, very welcoming and hospitable, he offered Oliver to drive him to the border. So Oliver accepted, and during the ride home, apparently Oliver was profusely asking, not for forgiveness, but he was asking him if he was all right, and that he felt bad. He kept saying that he felt bad. And apparently he stoically turned to Oliver and said, the thing that's the most complex, the hardest thing, basically, for humans to do, like the hardest thing to do as a human being, is to realize that it's simple. That life, it's simple. And I mean, like, that to me is so revolutionary, and yet it really does take a certain amount of experience for you to learn that. There's no amount of describing and detailing what that entails and what it means and what kind of impact it has on your life if you realize it and apply it. At the end of the day, it's why I paradoxically believe that you can and cannot help someone, in life. They are helped, but, it's just something that we perceive. Ultimately, they go through their experiences that they almost deterministically were supposed to go through, and learn the very things that you sort of almost warned them about, perhaps, so that you're giving them a key to the experience. So you're not helping them achieve anything, you're helping them perhaps achieve a little bit better what it is that they will encounter in the future. I don't know, but I really don't want to strain myself to figure out exactly how that works. In any case, the hardest thing to do is to understand that life is simple. And I'm starting to understand that in levels and gradients. And it's kind of funny how it really did take a lot of energy to be drained out of me for me to be able to see that clearly, to just see how simple life is and not have to act. Just let's say the circumstances dictate what it is that you have to make like decision. Now, the decision is not purely deterministic by the world around you. You don't have to just wait until things happen. You just have to be in the present moment, see what it is that is currently happening, and then check in with yourself. Know thyself, as they say. And ultimately, the decision is there. It's made for you. Because if you're true to yourself and you know yourself, then there's never really a decision to be made. You just try to understand the situation that's in front of you very clearly. You remain calm because that is honoring who you are and what it is that you need and want in life. And ultimately, the decision gets made. I'll give you a simple example. A couple days ago, I called the Greek embassy and they said, we're not giving out any national visas at the moment. It's due to the pandemic. And so you'll have to maybe call next week just in case. So I'm guessing this could be weeks, maybe never. They might not allow visas this year. So does that really mean that I can't go to Greece? No, I can go. It just means I won't be able to work there. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I'll still see if I can get the visa. If I can't, I'll just go and I'll make the videos that I want to make there, and I'll enjoy the experience that I have deep down in my heart that I want to experience. And that's it. Whether I'll find a job while I'm there and end the visa, or whether I'll come back, or hell, if I go to another country from there, it doesn't really matter. I mean, ultimately, I was able to book the flights. I have everything else set up naturally. I didn't have to really fight for, and it happened. And if it wouldn't have happened, then deep down inside, I feel as if though whatever I were to feel if I couldn't go at all would have been different anyway. So I don't know. It's an interesting sort of experience to really understand how simple it is to just accept life and then check in with yourself to know what it is that you have to do in accordance to how life is currently, the circumstances. So, yeah, life lessons. And ultimately, I think you can go home feeling like you've had a good day's work after having practiced that and put it into effect. Even if it drains your energy or, isn't pleasant sometimes, I feel like you can ultimately be fulfilled. You really achieve a sense of fulfillment when you do that. So, it's funny, I really wanted to get into what it is that I had felt in terms of the world around us, the future, what's going to happen, all this kind of stuff. And I guess I went with my feelings and it was all about me. So, I really did practice what I preach. So, yeah, maybe there'll be another time when it'll come out a little bit more naturally, where I can really express what it is that I am reflecting about the reality around me. But for now, there's still much more deep well to explore inside myself. And yeah, it's sort of my meditation, my moment for recentering everything. I feel like I've accomplished that tonight. So I think I'll just let it go there. It truly wasn't really the mind of James, it was more of a heart of James. Well, I'll still never change the title of the podcast. Ultimately, they're probably one and the same thing anyway.